Oh, God. What the... What... Where am I? That's not a beach.
You're at the bottom of the Blood Sea, Ruben. We need you to do a mission for us.
Whoa! Hold on. I did not agree to be at the bottom of any blood ocean here, man.
We're sorry, there's nothing we can do. You must complete the mission.
Okay, let's back up for a moment. What is it you even want me to do?
We want you to review Iron Lung, starring Markiplier.
I already did a short. We already did a short for that.
We would like you to do a full review and analysis.
How about just the review? I don't feel like doing a full analysis.
A full review and analysis.
Okay. Fine. Let's review Iron Lung. So, this is the chunk... wait a minute. I'm in the chunky 3D pixel submarine?
You don't have Markiplier's budget.
I guess that checks out. Hello and welcome back to Ruben Uncut. As you can see, I'm in a little bit of a predicament here, but that's besides the point. Because before I even get into any of this, I have an important thing I need to touch on. Because as of right now, I have exciting news to say about my channel. We have our first supporter, and by that I mean someone subscribed! Can you believe that? I can barely believe it, but my bank account will surely thank them as soon as their monthly subscription actually equals out to $100, and right now it's moving at $2.09 a month because YouTube takes 90 cents of that. Which actually is not as bad as I thought it would be, but the point is it's going to take a while. But I do need to give a personal shout out, and I'm going to start putting this at the end of every video. But personal shout out to supporter of the show, Bskov17. Not actually sure how you'd prefer that be pronounced, but or BSKOV17. Bskov actually 17 sounds better. Actually, now that I've said that out loud. But the point is, I thank you for supporting this program, even if it forces me to start putting in more effort to make things specifically for you, a single individual. But the important notice of this is that you too can join them in supporting me if that's a thing that you have the money and will to do. But thank you to Bskov17. You rule. Now that that's out of the way, Iron Lung by Markiplier. And by Markiplier is sort of the best way to put it, because he wrote it, he directed it, and he stars in it. This is the Markiplier show for better and for worse. I say for worse there, but the reality is that mostly I like Iron Lung. In fact, arguably, Iron Lung is the top tier of video game movies that I have seen. Now, to be fair, that bar is low as fuck. The bar for video game movies is significantly lower than comic book movies or any other type of adaptation, actually. So far, adaptations of video games have so far worked better for television than they have for movies for some reason, even though we've been trying to adapt video games into movies for literal decades, since video games were a thing. And for the most part, most video game movies are campy trash at best. In fact, the top tier video game movies are pretty much all aimed at children, with movies like Super Mario Brothers, Detective Pikachu, and the Sonic movies. Yes, those are the top tier of video game movies. Well, until Iron Lung happened. Finally, a video game movie for adults. And yes, I know the Mortal Kombat movies exist, but can we be real about the Mortal Kombat movies for a moment? None of them are good. Okay, the first movie of Mortal Kombat, fine, entertaining, whatever. But also a product of its time, cheaply made, doesn't always look good, but it did get several elements of the video game correct. Even if its action sequences seem more realistic than they would be in the game. And then, of course, the reboot of Mortal Kombat, which has an incredible 7-minute opening that goes into a complete waste of a film. But man, that 7 minutes at the top of that Mortal Kombat movie, kick ass. Too bad about everything else that movie was trying to do. But enough of that. We're here for Iron Lung. What is Iron Lung? Well, Iron Lung is based on a horror video game by David Szymanski. If you don't know who David Szymanski is, you should, because he is a top-tier indie video game developer. He didn't just make Iron Lung, he also made the janky but very entertaining Chop Goblin, or possibly the pinnacle of his current success, Dusk. Seriously, if you have not played Dusk, I highly recommend Dusk. It is quite possibly, boomer shooter or not, one of the best first-person shooters of the last decade, easily. Should I look at a calendar? When did that come out? The point is that Dusk is fucking awesome. And now that I've seen this movie, and I've played Dusk and Chop Goblin, Chop Goblin's a silly game, by the way, I definitely think I want to play Iron Lung. Especially having watched this movie. Because, and this is the thing, this is simultaneously one of the things that is most interesting about Iron Lung, the video game and / movie adaptation, is that it is an adaptation that feels like it's not necessarily going to ruin the game in terms of the story. I don't know how exactly to describe that, having not played the game, but one gets the feeling that this movie is holding back a lot of lore and things that is not fully explored. And that's not a complaint necessarily. So before I get into anything spoilery, I'll just cut to this. I enjoyed Iron Lung. I think that Iron Lung is a very good, slow burn cosmic horror, because that is in fact what it is. Now, based on looking around the internet for a brief few seconds, it has come to my attention that the movie is probably a little slow for some people's attention spans. I'll be real, I never felt that way while I was watching it. I had a generally entertaining time the whole way through. That being said, there is some of the movie that I could see being a little tedious on rewatch when I'm not being so formally exposed to what the movie is doing, and I already know where it's going. But I won't know that until I do see it again. The movie is 2 hours long, and that is probably a little bit longer than it should be, but I, having only seen it once, could not tell you for the life of me exactly where that time should have been made up. Because, believe it or not, I was never bored. The film does start off as a slow burn, don't get me wrong. We are introduced to the character of Simon, played by Markiplier. He is at the bottom of a blood ocean on a moon after a mysterious galactic apocalypse of some kind, where it appears that the stars have all gone out, and humanity is being plunged into darkness. But there is some type of hope, some believed hope, that exists at the bottom of this blood ocean on this moon. How a moon could possibly have an ocean made of literal blood is not explained in the movie, and I actually kind of doubt it's explained in the video game. But maybe this is just one of those cosmic horror things you're meant to accept about the universe, is that yes, we can have a planet that somehow is just covered in an ocean of congealed blood. Is there a Metalocalypse song about this? Anyways, the point is, that is the basic setup for what is happening. The movie keeps it vague, and in fairness, that's not a bad thing in a horror movie, because sometimes the lack of knowledge is where the fear comes from. And Markiplier's Simon has been put on a mission where they are clearly not giving him all the information. He can tell that they do not have his best interest at heart, and all he wants to do is get out of there alive. The entire film takes place inside the tiny submarine with Simon. It is an enclosed space. We are meant to feel a certain level of claustrophobia and entrapment. As Simon explores the tiny submarine, he slowly discovers new details and new clues, including the fact that they are lying to him about being the first person to use this submarine. There are clear signs that someone else before him has used it. And they leave behind a little glass medallion with something inside of it. I think it's a piece of a plant, but it's very unclear who this was and why it obviously has symbolic importance to Simon is actually one of the interesting details that we are not fully told as to why this thing he found is important to him. I believe it might be connected to something about what he was doing before he was arrested and forced into this predicament. Because this is the thing, Simon is a prisoner. And as the film goes on, we see a number of flashbacks and allusions to moments before he was arrested. It seems like Simon was part of some type of group of people who were, in some level, a resistance to some type of autocracy. However, at some point their plan went horribly awry, and they destroyed an important piece of infrastructure where people lived. I believe it was called the Filament Station. There is not a whole lot about this that we are truly told, but it seems like from the flashbacks that Simon did not actually want to destroy it, and that was merely a consequence of how things went poorly. That being said, Simon is now here at the bottom of the ocean. Did the strange glass medallion possibly represent the organization he was previously associated with? That would be my best guess, but I don't remember the movie ever actually telling me it. It's one of those incidences where show, don't tell actually creates a void of information instead of filling it. Once again, though, I don't really have a problem with this. This is more about the journey. This is more about watching him as he struggles to make his way through this hellish nightmare. The first half of the movie is mostly him coming to an understanding with his situation and how to operate the submarine. However, at a certain point, his mission goes horribly awry. But let me tell you something else about the submarine. The submarine, since he is in an ocean of blood, the submarine, he cannot just simply look out a porthole or use a regular camera. The submarine is built with an X-ray camera. Now, this is important information. The first few times we see him use the X-ray camera, we don't know it's an X-ray. And to us, it appears that he is merely taking a picture of giant skeletons at the bottom of the ocean. However, the implication of it being an X-ray scanner means that these skeletons are not necessarily just skeletons. In fact, at a certain point, we become aware that there is absolutely sea creatures in this blood ocean. Now, Markiplier is not the only character in the movie, but he is the only character who appears on screen for any significant amount of time. There are a number of different people who speak to him through the intercom system of his submarine. One of these appears to be the woman in charge, who also briefly appears to him through the window of the submarine when it is during the only sequence in the film where it is brought up to the surface. Although it should be noted that he has been sealed into the submarine. He cannot get out without them unwelding it. There is also a man who speaks to him over the intercom, and there is also a technician who he may have accidentally killed by exposing them to the X-ray camera. In fairness, they didn't tell him it was an X-ray camera. As Simon is exploring the ocean, he is told that his new job is to recover a piece of that skeleton that he witnessed. And the way to do that is to ram it with the submarine. When he returns to take a piece of the skeleton, he realizes that he can't find the skeleton anymore, and they tell him it must have been moved by the quakes. He does manage to relocate the skeleton, if it's a skeleton at all. He is told to ram it and take a piece of it. He proceeds to do this. However, shortly after this, something goes horribly wrong, and he finds himself way off the map in a cave, and he doesn't know how he got there. Now, to be clear, his submarine is in the underwater cave. Well, Underblood Cave. He finds himself exploring this new place and comes upon a sunken submarine that had previously been lost. And he even gets the name of the submarine from the side of it. He starts to make his way out of this cave. And this is where things start to escalate pretty quickly. He is now very aware that there are creatures out here. He eventually reconnects with the surface team, and the surface team says he's been gone for days, which doesn't make any sense to him. However, it's probably because before that, leaving the cave, he has had an encounter with an eldritch horror. Yes, at the bottom of the sea is an eldritch horror, as specifically clearly designed, by the way, off of a lanternfish. Wait, is that what they're called? No, I'm sorry. Based off of an anglerfish. The eldritch horror is clearly based off an anglerfish, and we can tell this for several reasons. Reason number one. A major focus of the film is the fact that there is a light source at the bottom of the blood ocean that supposedly can penetrate even the submarine. This is, of course, the light from the giant anglerfish. The other thing is that the giant evil eldritch anglerfish is clearly able to communicate and drive you insane, as Markiplier's character starts to lose his mind, having hallucinations, and even believing that someone is talking to him through the speakers from a supposedly other sub that was lost previously. This, of course, leads him to the anglerfish, which he somehow is not killed by. He then is able to make the contact with the surface team, even though he's apparently been missing for several days. And they initially don't want to bother to save him until he tells them that he found the other sub. And now they want him to go get that sub's black box. More specifically, to download its data into his black box. And so that becomes his new mission. They promise they can bring him to the surface. Now, the thing about the film, though, is that the larger theme of the film is that sometimes you are doing something for a good that is greater than yourself. And this is a major thing that sort of seems to seep in and out of the film as it goes on. Throughout most of the film, Simon's major concern is with saving his own life. However, once he recovers the black box information, and once he begins to... and once the anglerfish / blood sea start to really go after him, is when he realizes that he has to do what he needs to do for the bigger picture, because he understands now that his survival is not a factor. In the very final moments of the scene, there is a pretty spectacular uptick in the gore and body horror of the situation. Although, to be fair, it's still not the goriest movie. It still has significantly more blood than gore at any given moment. Not only that, but the blood itself, there's something wrong with it, and actually starts to, mutate and consume Markiplier's body. Markiplier's character Simon will ultimately choose to make sure that the black box makes it to the surface, even if he doesn't. And that's the film. The movie is full of a lot of him trying to figure out his situation, trying to work his way through the sub, and there are some who will say that this is where the film is too long. However, I would say that this is also part of what makes the film what it is. Sure, it's a slow burn. I can't deny that. Could this film be shorter? Probably. But it's still, in my mind, a very solid cosmic horror movie. That it's slow burn. But best of all, and I have to stress this, it's a horror movie where it doesn't rely on at any point people being stupid. Okay? The stupidest things that he does is just expose the technician to the X-ray thing, and in fairness, that's not even his fault. In fact, many of the things that are happening to Simon are outside of his control, and the movie is focusing on him simply engaging with the handful of things that he actually can control. One could argue that that is ultimately another piece of the film's overall message and flavor to it. He wants to live, but he only can control so many things. Can he control the submarine? He can control the black box, and he can work with the X-ray camera. But at the end of the day, there are rules that have to be applied to everything. There are functions he has to engage with. And at no point in the film did I have a moment where I was like, oh God, he's being a fucking idiot. At every point in the movie, it was, well, no, it makes sense that he's engaging with it in that manner. And I really appreciate that in a horror movie, because so many horror movies rely so heavily on people being fucking idiots. And I didn't feel that here at all. And honestly, I thought Markiplier did a good job of both acting, directing, and writing in this situation. I enjoyed Markiplier's performance. I don't watch Markiplier regularly. I've seen a couple clips and episodes maybe of him playing a game here and there, but it's never really been someone that I invested in. So for me, I came in with very little prior investment in him or his projects. And having witnessed this, I have to say, I think Markiplier has talent, and that if he made another movie, it could be even better. More tightly paced, maybe. The film looks good, it sounds good, and it's acted good. Yeah, I liked Iron Lung. The critics are all over the place on this one. Straight 50% on Rotten Tomato last time I looked. And I have to say, I don't know what the critics' problem is. One critic called it incoherent, which is I don't know if they just didn't understand that the anglerfish was driving him insane and lost track of things during his insanity or something, but I would have to heavily disagree that the film is incoherent. But maybe hallucinations are just too much for some critics. So anyways, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say. I hope you I hope you subscribe. I hope you don't get too pissed off when you realize that I mostly cover politics in addition to movies. And if you want to join BScove17, you too can choose to give me money and support what I'm doing. Who knows? Maybe eventually I have enough support that I'll have to put in actual effort. Anyways, thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful whatever, wherever, whoever you are. There. I reviewed Iron Lung. We good? We good? Can I come up now? That I've reviewed Iron Lung?
Ruben, we need you to go to the other submarine and download the black box.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
It contains the Epstein files.
Oh, I guess I gotta go do that thing then. This is my special shout out to BScove17, a viewer who makes this program possible.